according to the researchers over at the Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE, it appears that hundreds of millions of dollars worth of PPP COVID loans were given to children. Specifically, over the weekend, the official DOGE account on Twitter, the official DOGE account on X released the following statement, quote, "In 2020 through 2021, the Small Business Administration granted 5,593 loans for $312 million to borrowers whose only listed owner was 11 years old or younger at the time of the loan. While it is possible to have business arrangements where this is legal, that is highly unlikely for these 5,593 loans, as they all also used a Social Security number with the incorrect name." Now, the roughly 5,600 loans in question here come in one of two types. They were either PPP loans, which stands for the Paycheck Protection Program, or they were part of the EIDL, which stands for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Both of these two programs were used extensively during the years of the COVID pandemic in order to, you can say, essentially prop up the economy. In particular, the PPP loans were quite attractive to business owners, given the fact that if you took a PPP loan and you used that money to pay your workers instead of laying them off, then the entire loan would actually be forgiven by the Small Business Administration. And actually, it's worth mentioning that even before DOGE began digging through all the data under the Trump administration, there's actually been extensive research which has shown that these PPP loan programs were heavily abused, with many people just starting up fake businesses, getting the money from the government, and paying themselves in the form of a nice fancy car, nice vacations to Miami, and things like that. That type of a scam was already well known. But what the DOGE team is uncovering now is that an unrealistic number of young people were also signing up for these loans. Nearly 5,600 loans, totaling roughly $312 million, were handed out to businesses whose listed owners were 11 years old or younger. And this announcement of theirs, by the way, came just 4 days after another revelation regarding old people. Quote, "In 2020 through 2021, the Small Business Administration issued 3,095 loans, including PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, and EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, for $333 million to borrowers over 115 years old who were still marked as alive in the Social Security database. In one case, a 157-year-old individual received $36,000 in loans." And so, just to reiterate here, the government's own internal records show that over $300 million was given out to borrowers over the age of 115. Now, you might be wondering, how many people over the age of 115 live here in America? Well, alongside that statement from DOGE, you had a corollary statement released by Elon Musk, which included the following chart here. The chart, it shows the number of people in the Social Security database who have their death field marked as false, meaning that according to the government, they're recognized as being alive. And according to the numbers, there are well over 10 million people who are apparently over the age of 120, which might make sense. I mean, America is a strong country with good healthcare. It's expensive healthcare, but it's good healthcare. However, given the fact that the oldest living person on Earth right now, at least officially, is a 116-year-old Brazilian woman, well, it's unlikely that there are any people in the US over 120 years old, let alone 10 million of them. And so what all this adds up to is that either American entrepreneurs run the gamut of age, going from well under 11 years old all the way up to 115 years old, and they're all collecting these small business loans, or there's something else going on here, either some kind of fraud or perhaps just database mismanagement. More than likely, both at the same time. The DOGE team stated that they are now working alongside the Small Business Administration to resolve these issues. If you'd like to dig deeper into what they've uncovered thus far, I'll throw some of my reference notes down into the description box below, which I should mention is that same description box right below those like and subscribe buttons, which I hope you smash so that this content can reach ever more people. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and move on over to Washington, D.C. Shortly after midnight on Sunday, March 9th, there was a confrontation near the White House, which ultimately resulted in Secret Service agents shooting a man who was allegedly armed with a gun. The shooting took place near the intersection of F Street Northwest and 17th Street, which, as you can see from the map, is located very close to the White House Plaza itself. Basically, the only structure between that intersection and the Oval Office is the Eisenhower Executive Office building. However, there is also a small army of Secret Service agents as well guarding the president. Here's specifically what happened according to a statement that was released by the U.S. Secret Service. Quote, earlier on Saturday, local police shared information about a suicidal individual who may be traveling to Washington, D.C. from Indiana. Around midnight, members of the Secret Service encountered the individual's parked vehicle near 17th and F Streets Northwest. They also saw an individual on foot matching the description nearby. As officers approached, the individual brandished a firearm and an armed confrontation ensued, during which shots were fired by our personnel. The suspect was transported to an area hospital and his condition is unknown. There were no reported injuries to Secret Service personnel. Now, as of this moment right now, no further details have been released regarding this quote-unquote suicidal individual, such as, for instance, why in the first place he was on the U.S. government's radar, and also how they know that he was, as they called him, suicidal. The DC Metro Police, they came out and they said that their investigators within their Internal Affairs Division were probing the incident and further details will be released to the public later. Regardless, though, it is perhaps worth mentioning that at the time of the shooting, President Trump was actually not in the White House. He actually wasn't in Washington, D.C. at all. He was at his Mar-a-Lago home over in Florida for the weekend. However, having said that, it appears that there was actually a separate incident down in Mar-a-Lago within the same general time period as this DC shooting. All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, which is Home Title Lock. Look, if you own a house in America, then you are already getting robbed by the government in the form of paying property taxes every single year. And frankly, there's nothing you can really do about that. However, you can protect yourself from a growing crime that the FBI calls house stealing. Here's how it works. A criminal, they can forge your signature on one single document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a very small fee, and file that document with your local recorder's office, and that's it. Just like that, your home title has been transferred to their name, and they can do things like take out loans against your equity, or they can even sell your house behind your back. And you won't know any of this is happening until you're checking your mail and you start getting either collection notices or foreclosure notices. And so this is where Home Title Lock comes in. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep both your home and your equity safe. It comes with immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property. If anything does happen, they issue urgent alerts for any changes to your title. And if somehow fraud does happen, their US-based restoration team will spend upwards of $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title to your name at no additional cost. And the best part is that for our viewers, Home Title Lock will give you a free title history report so you can see if you've already been a victim, and they will give you access to your own personal title expert, which is a $250 value just for signing up. And so head on over to HometitleLock.com and use promo code Roman250 to take advantage of this offer. Again, that's promo code Roman250, and also throw all the details regarding their services down into the description box below. You see, on Sunday, March 9th at around 1:15 p.m., Air Force fighter jets intercepted a civilian aircraft that was flying in restricted airspace near Mar-a-Lago. According to a statement that was put out by NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the civilian aircraft was immediately intercepted and escorted out of the area by F-16 fighter jets. Here's specifically what the statement read. And by the way, the title of the statement has a huge typo. It says aircraft instead of aircraft. If anyone from NORAD is watching this, I would highly recommend you fix that ASAP. Regardless, though, here is what the relevant part of the statement said. Quote, NORAD F-16 fighter aircraft responded to a general aviation aircraft over Palm Beach, Florida on March 9, 2025. The civilian aircraft violated the temporary flight restriction at approximately 1:15 p.m. The aircraft was safely escorted out of the area by NORAD aircraft. During the intercept, NORAD aircraft dispensed flares, which may have been visible to the public. The flares were used to draw attention from or communicate with the pilot. Flares are employed with the highest regard for safety, burn out quickly and completely, and pose no danger to people on the ground. Meaning that if you happen to have been in Palm Beach on Sunday and you saw some weird lights in the sky, well, it might have been these flares telling that pilot to either turn around or just get shot out of the sky. However, from their statement, it appears that this incursion in Mar-a-Lago airspace was accidental and without ill intent. And also, NORAD goes on in their statement to mention that since Trump's second inauguration, they have responded to well over 20 such incursions in Palm Beach. For instance, they mentioned that just this month, quote, On March 1st, NORAD F-16 fighter jets intercepted 3 civilian aircraft, violating airspace restrictions over Palm Beach at different intervals. The fighter jets fired flares at 2 of the aircraft, and all 3 were escorted out of the restricted airspace. And then furthermore, 2 weeks before that, you had, quote, another airspace violation was reported on February 18th. NORAD said that the civilian aircraft was intercepted, flared, and escorted out of the area. And so, due to these large numbers of encounters, you had a statement come out from the commander of NORAD himself, General Gregory Gillet, who said the following, quote, adherence to the TFRs, which are the temporary flight restriction procedures, is essential to ensure flight safety, national security, and the security of the president. The procedures are not optional, and the excessive number of recent TFR violations indicates that many civil aviators are not reading the notice to airmen before each flight as required by the FAA, and has resulted in multiple responses by NORAD fighter aircraft to guide offending aircraft out of the TFR. And so, what all this adds up to is that if you happen to be a Florida civil pilot watching this episode, well, consider keeping up with the notices to airmen in order to avoid finding yourself in a situation where you're suddenly surrounded by F-16 fighter jets ready and willing to blow you out of the sky if you don't turn around fast enough. If you'd like to read either about this shooting that took place in Washington, D.C., or these incursions that have happened more and more frequently over Mar-a-Lago, I'll throw all my reference notes down into the description box below this video for you to peruse at your own leisure. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.